This is RN Raw. It's Monday, June 24th, and I am joined on Skep Talk by Professor Dave. Professor Dave, how you doing, sir?
Good. How are you doing? Always a pleasure.
What's latest going on in your life, sir?
Not much. I mean, I had a couple videos go unexpectedly viral, just debunking some Joe Rogan guests.
I always run into. I argue with idiots online all the time, and they're just like in social media and everything. They're always talking about how they would so pwn me or whatever if they ever had the opportunity. So today I went ahead and put out on Facebook and on Twitter that, hey, I'm going to be on Skep Talk. Creationists, you think you got something? Let's hear it. Let's hear what you think you have.
Yep.
Yeah. So we will find out about that shortly. By the way, I told you what I was looking for just now. I was looking for somebody to call in and give us a good argument.
It's a good challenge. Yeah, I'm always ready. I like a good intellectual challenge. I like to try to think on my feet. Why not? Yeah. I mean, I'm down for anything, as always.
Well, as it happens, we do have a theist on the line, and the last time we hosted this show, we had one that was waiting in the queue for just a couple of minutes. Well, it was waiting patiently, and we lost him. So I'm not going to wait any longer on this one. We'll go ahead and bring in Adam from the UK. Can you hear us, sir?
Yes, I can.
Very good, very good. So you are a theist as opposed to atheist, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what is your argument?
Well, so I've called in to claim that we can reason that the initial state of the universe was the product of a mental state. And to conclude that, we need to have a model which relates mind and information. And this can be accomplished by just copying the structure of mathematical sets. So in mathematics, an infinite set can output a finite space, like containing values, using a function. But our mental thought works in the same way. So our minds have the exact same structure because we can think of an infinite number of different symbols or propositions. And when we do this, we define out a subset of that information and attribute a value to it. So that would be the output. In fact,
my first question about that would be, what is a mind? And my understanding of that is the mind is the consciousness or your qualia, the product, the memories, and so forth of a brain.
Okay.
Of some sort.
Yeah. So
so you have to have a brain in order to produce a mind.
Well, I wouldn't hold to that presupposition, but so you're asking me what I regard
How
a mind as.
How can you have a mind without a brain?
Well, I would say that the functions that a brain obeys, if you say those are physical functions, since a brain is a physical thing, I'd say that the mind is capable of functions that the brain isn't. So that would be the first
Well, technically,
point,
the mind, every mind that we're aware of is also physical, being that it is the product of a brain. I mean, your thoughts and your memories, these can all be altered physically. They're subject to chemistry and they're subject to injury and so forth. So all brains, all minds are physical. So back to the earlier question, how can you have a mind that is not physical and that is not the product of a brain?
Right. Okay. So if I'm going to have to justify that, I'll just say that you can have a view of reality which is like hierarchical, where the physical is just at the bottom of the hierarchy. In the physical state, we have our objects with specific values, like physical values like velocity of something, a charge or something, that exist at only specific places in space and time. Whereas the mind is capable of more than this. It's capable of abstractions which encompass swathes of physical facts, mathematical facts, logical facts. It's just that mathematics and logic and mental things would just be on higher levels. They'd just be higher levels of the structure.
Okay, so you've decided that the physical is the bottom rung, and you've made the assertion that rather than explain how a mind can be not physical, you've just asserted that there is an immaterial mind and that it's higher somehow. The second assertion is that it's higher than the physical and that it is capable of more than the physical is. And you've made all three of these assertions without any supportive data. Now, I realize you said you've got a mathematical way of kind of defining this into existence some way, but I still have the same question. How does, if you're not going to explain to me how a mind can be immaterial, explain to me how a mind can do anything with the physical world.
Okay, so I mean, the reason why I was explaining that is just I'm just explaining like my view. Like you could have a different view of where physics is situated with regards to the mind, what the relationship between mind and matter is. If you want me to explain how, well, I mean, the first place we get any truth from is our private experience, and we have to take that as the starting point. So if we can understand truthful relationships to things that aren't actually physical, well, then the question really kind of turns around and becomes, how can the brain produce the mind if the brain is physical, and physical things are only capable of changing
and the
physical
mind
things
is physical too. The mind is necessarily physical too. So you're positing an immaterial mind, something we don't have precedent for, with something we don't have evidence for, and then you're making the assertion that the immaterial mind is capable of doing things without any sort of physical capacity, but it's capable of affecting physical things. So it would sound like you're supporting telekinesis, but even telekinesis would still imply that there's a physical interaction between the mind/brain and the rest of the physical world around it. Now you're talking about an immaterial mind's brainless immaterial mind. So it's not telekinesis. How then does the immaterial mind, which you suggested without any supportive data at all, but you've made the assertion that this mind can do things beyond what the physical can do. Can you show that it can do anything at all, whether it's above or below the? Just show that this mind is capable of doing fuck all.
Well, we know that minds affect things physically, and what I'm trying to do is present the evidence to you. That we can have minds without.
What evidence would that be? I'm keen to remind me when we get to the evidence.
Okay, well, the evidence is what our private experience is. Like we understand truths that aren't physical truths. So physical facts and physical
what's a non-physical truth?
Like the distinction between, say, for example, true or false, or like logical implication, certain mathematical rules that just don't physically exist. So, like what, like Penrose stairs, those have.
So you're saying that this immaterial mind that you're talking about is an abstract concept, so it also doesn't really exist?
No, I'm saying that it does exist. I'm saying the physical universe exists, and it's related to.
You're talking about things, abstract things that only exist in the mind. So, like the concepts of mathematical concepts that you would talk about, irrational numbers or whatever. It sounds like you're talking about things that conceptually only exist in the mind. So, but you're talking about something that is a mind but isn't physical. It's outside the mind, above the mind somehow, and is capable of doing things to the physical world somehow. What's the somehow? If you won't tell me how the mind can exist at all, then tell me how this immaterial mind does anything.
Okay. Well, I mean, things happen in physics in general according to quantum mechanics, right? So in quantum mechanics, you have this relationship between like wave functions, which are abstract, and the actual product of the collapse, which is the physical thing that you can actually see.
Wave functions are abstract?
Place. Well, yeah, because they encompass entire swathes of space and time. They're not confined to one particular coordinate.
Okay,
and what
Dave,
I'm saying is
I don't do physics. I don't do cosmology. Wave functions are abstract?
I don't know that I would say that. I mean, I think the main problem here is that you're doing a lot of ad hoc assertions, which is fine, but you're trying to apply that to cosmology, which is empirical. So it's just kind of a weird roundabout way of justifying the belief. I mean, I think I understand the psychological motivation of doing that, but it doesn't really bear any fruit because you're not coming at this from the standpoint of looking at cosmology and trying to work with the data that's present there in the field, you know?
Okay. So I mean, the relationship that I'm trying to answer Aaron's question with is just to say that I view quantum mechanics as just the relationship by which minds produce physical instantiations. That's what I'm saying. It's the observer effect, right?
I'm not following that sentence.
So I'm saying that, right, you have a mind, and then you have, within that mind, you have abstractions, and then you have like point-like objects. Right? So an object that exists according to a certain description, like a certain rule, like a rule of processing, computation, that kind of thing. The abstract things are the computations and the laws of mathematics, whatever.
You're saying a wave.
Did I hear you say a moment ago that this immaterial mind produces physical things?
Yeah, that's the way I view things.
And how
there's the interface
mind
there.
How does I mean, it sounds like I could paraphrase this, I think, accurately, if I were to say that the immaterial mind that you're talking about literally dreams shit up.
Yeah, it sounds like magic.
Familiar with Bernardo Castro. I mean, he outlines the basic kind of worldview here. So you have a mind at large, which produces thoughts, and the thoughts are basically a wave function. And then individual minds then interact with that wave function. And during that interaction, the thoughts of one mind and another, they collapse the reality to the given instance of reality that you see in front of you.
So we, Dave and I, can have a meeting of the minds and collapse reality? Or do you already have to collapse reality in some sense before you could believe what you just said?
Well, the mind at large, or God, that has to establish the most generic facts, and then what we do is we decide. Obviously, we have control over our own bodies, so then we participate in reality at the local level. That's what I'm saying.
But you're trying to take you're taking the concept of superposition and you're injecting just a little bit of mysticism in there and trying to attribute it to some kind of immaterial world. That's not really how physicists talk about it. I mean, you can have like an outlandish interpretation of it, I guess, but that's not really what physics says. You know what I mean?
Well, that's not their job. Like, they're not theologians.
Well, yeah, but
and why would they be?
You're adding an ad hoc layer on top of empirical science that there's no connection there, right?
Yeah, and some physicists are theologians. The problem is the theologians know that there's no evidence that any of this is true. These are called assertions. Assertions are when you say something's true and there's no way to show whether it's true or false. It's just, or maybe it's just that there's no way to show that it's true. Assertions could easily be shown to be false.
Okay.
Also, do you have anything that shows that this is true? Do you have a reason to believe this?
Right. So from which standpoint? So you're asking me about the stuff I was saying before about like wave functions, quantum mechanics, or from the first argument I tried?
Let's try the simple thing first. Do you have a reason to believe this?
Well, yeah. Which part?
Okay. Any of the parts. Do you have a reason to believe any of this? Do you have a separate question? Do you have a reason to believe all of this?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I just like summarize the argument. So I just say that
you gave an argument. You didn't give. You gave an argument that was based entirely on assumptions of assertions, or assertion of assumptions.
All right. Well,
but you didn't give a reason to believe any of it.
Well, right. Okay. So let me just give an argument, like a step-by-step argument. So,
will it include a reason to believe the argument?
Yeah, that just be like the validity of the argument.
Okay. So
Okay. So like
the validity of the argument. So the argument is the argument. The argument is the reason. The validity of the argument, which is nothing but unsupported assertions, and that's it. So all we have are unsupported assertions, and that's it.
What you're saying that they're unsupported, but you can ask me about any of them. I can try my best to explain them to you.
I did, and you said the argument is the argument, and the argument is the argument, and therefore we're done. That's if the argument is your reason to believe it is because you have an argument. Unsupported assertions are all your argument is, so all you have are unsupported assertions. You just haven't realized that part yet.
I think the problem we're having here is that you're trying to build some kind of argument for how the immaterial can interact with the material, and the bridge that you're using is the wave function, and you're treating it in an overly abstract, mystical way, in a way that physicists don't really talk about it. I think you're kind of taking advantage of the concepts in quantum mechanics to try to pretend that there's something immaterial going on there. We're still just asking the simple question: how can the immaterial interact with the material? Right? All of the laws and the rules that we understand from science, from physics, regarding how the physical world operates, it's all physicality. It's all based on physical things. So we're still looking for some kind of an answer in terms of how the immaterial world can affect the material world, and just saying wave function kind of doesn't cut it. You know what I mean?
Well, if you say wave function and quantum mechanics in the same sentence, that's got to confuse enough people that it sounds like a valid argument.
Yeah.
Right. So, do you acknowledge that mathematics is abstract?
Is it? Do quantities of elements, do quantities of things still exist, regardless whether we're there to count them or not? Would the quantities change if no one was there to count them?
Yeah, sure.
And it wouldn't matter what numeric system you do. Base 8 wouldn't matter. I mean, ultimately, the quantities remain the same, regardless which system you use, and regardless whether someone counts them at all. So that if you double that, or if somehow a duplication occurred, then we would have twice those things, right? So a number plus a number is still the same thing as twice that number, whether someone's there to count that, whether someone's there to do the math or not, right?
Right.
So it's not abstract.
Well, I could go in the middle there. I mean, mathematical relationships are inherent in the universe, but then we also conceive of irrational numbers and imaginary numbers and things like that. But I think we're just doing computation. You know what I mean? We're just like that. We can think abstractly doesn't demonstrate the actual existence of an immaterial world. I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay. So I agree with what Dave just said. So what I was trying to ask is that if you were to acknowledge that mathematics is abstract, I wasn't saying that it's not objective. I just believe in an objective abstract world as well as an object concrete world.
Okay, so you don't think that mathematics is objective. So as some mathematicians have actually done, they posted this thing. They wrote a paper to prove mathematically that 2 + 2 doesn't necessarily always equal 4. Now, it was a great joke that they played on people by, you would have to know something about mathematics in order to realize where the flaw is. But there was somebody that posted a paper like this. And of course, it was disproved based entirely on the fact that mathematics is objective. It's not abstract. So that even when a mathematician produces a paper to make a bogus argument, we can still prove that the argument is bogus objectively, without relying what the difference between objective and subjective is. It's not reliant on any one person's personal experiences or impressions or whatever. This can be confirmed by a group of other people.
I think the problem is that I think you're conflating abstract and immaterial, right? Like that we can think something abstractly doesn't point to the actual existence of immaterial. You know what I mean?
Okay, so there's two things. The first thing that I disagree with is the idea that something that's abstract isn't objective. What I'm saying is I believe in both both objective concrete things and an abstract domain. So that reality has an objective abstract domain. To me, that's the reason why there are objectively correct mathematical answers. Obviously, on our side of the correspondence, we can be incorrect. We can be irrational about mathematics, but the very possibility of rationality means that there is a correct way of mathematically expressing things. But as to what you said, you're saying that the abstract is not immaterial. I'd say that they are coextensive. Right? They are the same, because something to be material, it has to have an existence that is specific to some location. It's an object that you can measure. It's an object that exists in a certain place and time. Whereas abstract is like the opposite of that. That abstractions are things that encompass large groups, categories of objects, and that's what immaterial means. Something that's material is not restricted to one place.
For example, what I'm saying is in mathematics, we utilize the concept of infinities, and there's all different kinds of infinities and scales of infinities and things. But I don't believe that anything infinite exists.
Okay, but why not? Wouldn't that be inconsistent with the rest of mathematics?
Why? Why would it follow that just because we can conceive of something abstractly, that it therefore must exist, whether we deem it material or immaterial?
I can conceive of Godzilla. Does that mean that Godzilla exists?
Well, addressing the infinity thing. So when we look at the universe, so the universe is a finite space. It contains finite values. Well, in mathematics, when you have a finite space and finite values, it has to be connected to an infinite set through a function. So it's called a bijection function. And that's just for the sake of consistency. It's because the members of the set they have to come from an infinite set, and they are bounded into like a bounded space by the relations of the set, and that's through the function.
I hate to use a word that flat earthers use all the time incorrectly, but this term reification, I feel like that's what's going on here, taking something abstract and trying to imply some kind of actual concrete existence. I understand what you're saying, and I mean, well, to an extent. I'm not like a math expert or anything, but you can make these kinds of connections, and I just don't see them necessarily having to then manifest.
So you're saying that you're saying that the mind can cause things to come into being, and then you used your mind to cause this God to come into being through the course of your argument, which is all you have is your argument. Your argument is your argument. The argument is its own validation. It's unsupported by any evidence. There's no reason to believe the argument except that it convinces you that you can convince something to come into existence. So I can conceive of Godzilla. Does that mean that Godzilla exists?
Well, no, but my argument doesn't do that.
Why can't Godzilla exist? I really want to come up with a mathematical abstraction by which Godzilla can exist.
I don't think it can't exist. I just don't think it does. We've never observed it, so we have no reason to think it does.
Oh, there's no reason to think that Godzilla exists. Drop the Zilla off that sentence. Let's try this again.
You've never observed any evidence for the immaterial world, is what we're getting at here.
Well, that takes me back to something I said earlier. So that there are facts about the world that are not physical facts. They're not material facts, like facts about mathematical consistency, like facts about geometry, like facts about logical relationships that never appear, that never that you might never observe in physics.
Okay, but that's so why you're equivocating this abstraction with the existence of an actual entity, right? I think that's where we're not seeing eye to eye here. Like, we understand the concept of abstraction, and we're understanding the concept of immateriality, and you're equivocating them, and we're not. I think might be the main thing we're not agreeing on here.
Right. Okay. So the reason why I'm concluding that God exists from the argument is that there's a relationship between information and mind. What I'm saying is we observe the kind of information that allows us to conclude that in the universe. Right. So the type of information that we observe, like laws of physics, physical facts, they're obviously independent of human beings, but they have to come from somewhere. They have specific values. They have a specific structure, and through the mathematical model, we can infer that they're designed by a mind that is infinite in nature. That's what I'm saying.
Why would we make the baseless, unsupported assumption that because in order for anything to exist, it must have properties. So you're saying that the properties of anything that exists, we can infer that they must have come from a mind, except that I cannot infer anything that is not evidently true and that is not even possible. Can you show me that it is even possible for a mind to cause this to come into existence? Not just that it's true. Show me that it's possible.
Right. So I mean, you could say that there's a relationship, but what I'm saying is that
I could say
the
lots
world
of things.
consists.
Sorry. Look, also more importantly, I think you use this. You said that everything has to come from something, but then you invented a thing whose origin you refuse to explain. Right? I think that's the main problem behind all of this. Is you're very uncomfortable with a causeless universe, and so you're making these assertions about an entity that must have created it. But then you're stopping the the responsibility there. Right, it's going to be turtles all the way down. Right, we can play this same game and say, where did this immaterial entity come from? What is the origin of that? And of course, you will say that you don't need to explain that, right? But why, right? You would need to explain that just as much as a cosmologist would need to explain the origin of the universe, right?
Well, no, I'd say that it's eternal and it's also omnipresent. There isn't anything outside of it. Right? By definition, it's all encompassing.
How can anything
has to everything else?
Why does that make sense, right? How can something exist eternally into the past or outside of time or whatever justification you want to make? Why does that make more sense than a universe being causeless?
Well, I don't apply the question of causation to the beginning point of the universe, because obviously causation takes place in space and time. But again, what you mean
there is no beginning of the universe, so we could start there. The universe didn't have a beginning.
Well, it's up for debate.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, I mean, NASA says that it's 13.8 billion years old, and there's reasons to think that as well.
Cosmic inflation has been dated to that, but not the universe itself. So material energy, in every model of cosmogony that has a singularity, that singularity pre-exists the inflation. And there are models in which there's a previous form of the universe, or that either the singularity is eternal itself, or there's a previous form of the universe that kind of collapses into itself, where the arrow of entropy changes direction. Things like that. There's a reason I say that I don't do cosmogony. I like to do things that are more easily demonstrated for smaller minds like my own.
But I think more cosmologists would posit that there is a t equals 0. I mean, I myself believe that. I say the word belief because we don't have information prior to a very particular small increment of time after the singularity. But
and to your point, if there is a t equals 0, that singularity is already there. So there was never a point when there was just nothing. The material energy that's contained within the singularity is already there. And coincidentally, according to Sean Carroll, universal wave function also is already there and not abstract.
Well, I agree that they're there, but I don't disagree with the abstract. Okay. So what was it you wanted me to say? So you're actually asking me where God comes from, right?
Well, I don't even really want to have that conversation so much as I just want to point out that you're trying to exclude your entity, your immaterial entity, from requiring any kind of explanation. You're just asserting it was there, it was always there. It's why can't we just do that with the universe, right? Why can't we just cut out one extra step and just say that?
And I'm taking a very different tack. I'm taking the point that we both have the same reality to explain, and without trying to avoid absolutes and trying to weigh multiple hypotheses at once. Let's gather our evidence to see which of our two hypotheses is better supported by the most or best or most reliable evidence. So we have a universe which may or may not have had a beginning. If it had a beginning, the material energy was already there, so that it never started from nothing. That's the argument I probably hate from creationists the most. You believe everything came from nothing. No, I fucking don't. And I wish I didn't have to hear that from you every goddamn day. So we have a universe that did not start from nothing, if it started at all. And then we have a cosmic inflation that could have been for any number of reasons. Now let's hypothesize what the issue is. And I don't know what relevance the God idea has, because when people who are arguing for God, they're usually arguing for some doctrine of man-made mythology that we know is not true, arguing against sciences like evolution that we know and can prove are true.
Go with just some abstract, right? Let's just stick with a very general, nondescript God. I think that's fine.
Yeah. So let's say we have a singularity. Maybe it's eternal. Maybe it's preceded by a former version of the universe. Regardless, whatever. Nearly 4 billion years ago, we have a singularity that begins an inflation, a cosmic inflation at rapid speeds, for whatever reason. And we're going to come up with explanations for that. And you're going to posit an immaterial mind, whatever the fuck that means. So explain that, and explain how your brainless mind does anything.
Okay. So, I mean, just quickly addressing what Dave was saying. So, it's not the fact that I'm just asserting that God isn't subject to the same relationship, like the causation relationship. It's just that the universe is finite in nature. And if it's finite, then it still has a relationship to an infinite thing. Well, yeah.
Do we know for sure that the universe is finite? Because I'm not even sure that they're absolutely certain about that.
Well, let's go with it, because I believe that. So let's hear it.
Professor Dave believes the universe is finite.
I believe that.
I'm on the fence. I have no idea.
I believe that there's no infinity of any kind, that there is no actualized infinity, whether that's space, time, the potentiality
or chronology.
Of any.
There's a temporal infinity either way?
No, neither way, yeah.
Neither way. You think time will end? You think there's going to be an end of time?
Yeah, at least in this universe. And so maybe there are other ones.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, I mean, my basis of defending it would just be to say that if the universe were infinite in volume, then the energy density would be infinitely low. We know that's not the case. Right? So there's a finite temperature in the universe that kind of proves on its own. And to be infinitely large, it would have to be expanding for an infinite period of time, which we also know to be the case. So I mean,
sure.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that with the reason why God is infinite, the universe isn't infinite, just because of this relationship between a finite space and an infinite space, right? There's a function that produces the space. So we know that space is expanding.
You believe God is infinite?
It's expanding. Well, God isn't physically bounded, so yeah.
Is he bounded in his intellectual capacity?
I would say no.
Is he bounded in his understanding of how we would misunderstand every scripture ever written by man?
Well, we don't think no.
But I also find it funny that we're referring to him as a he. I've never found that to make an ounce of sense.
It really doesn't. I get you, but yeah, God is always depicted as a he, except in minority religions.
Yeah, but again, we can steelman this and stay away from any religious depictions of a deity. Let's just stick with the ultimate abstraction. He can delineate the properties of this deity however he wishes. I still don't believe in it, but it's not as patently absurd as the deities of the major religions.
True. I'm just saying that if there was an infinite deity, I mean, he's absolutely infinite, one would have to wonder why this deity would allow all these awfully wrong religions, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, all of these. But maybe it's an apathetic God. Maybe we're talking about a deistic God.
Yeah.
There are a number of options.
Only
God
the
just doesn't give a
Abrahamic
damn whether we literally doesn't give a damn whether we have a correct understanding or not.
right. We can conceive of such an entity, but the problem I'm having here
But
is
that means it exists.
yeah. But why are we then not talking about the origin or the causation of this infinite entity, right? It's a much harder pill to swallow that an infinite entity simply exists without cause than the finite universe. And again, that we can conceive of infinity as a concept does not actualize. It does not then therefore mean that anything infinite does exist.
Okay. Well, I mean, to address that, I kind of have to refer to the contingency argument, because you have to start talking about this relationship of contingency. So, something that's contingent is something which exists under certain conditions and does not exist under other conditions. But there's a famous syllogism.
Just a moment. I'll let you continue. Are you going to go into the argument for a necessary being?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Continue.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just to lay it out, you say if everything is contingent, then the series of entities has no first term that provides it with existence. And if the series of entities has no first term that provides it with existence, then nothing in the series of entities exists. But entities in the series do exist, right? So we do observe existence. So therefore, some entity in the series is non-contingent. And so only a contingent entity can be temporal. So basically, therefore, a non-contingent entity is eternal. Yeah. So basically, there's a first entity of the series which is non-contingent and eternal, and that just means that everything depends on that, because everything else is contingent on it.
Go ahead.
You got this one, Dave.
I don't. I was not following.
The argument for the necessary being, every version of the argument is always a syllogism that, much like the Kalam cosmological argument, the premises are not necessarily true, and the conclusion is a non sequitur, which also depends on certain things being misdefined. Like where if you define truth incorrectly and you define God incorrectly, then you can define God as truth. And that's where the whole thing about the necessary being seems to come from. That was what was it? That was Aquinas that came up with the argument for the necessary being. And it's amazing to me that so many centuries later, people still use it. But it really boils down to, you can't explain blank, therefore magic.
Well, no, it's not saying that. It's just saying that.
Well, God is magic. Same thing.
But it's saying that you can't have an infinite regress of contingent entities. There has to be some member of the series that is the first term. That's what it's saying.
Why isn't it the universe?
So when I got into a debate on this topic with some people, and I said, okay, well, if material energy, if nothing, if everything didn't come from nothing, if there was never a time when there was nothing, in this universe where there's something, there must always have been something. The something of eternity is apparently material energy, or dead, unconscious material. And the people that I was debating with decided that the necessary being was my conclusion of dead, unconscious material was somehow their living, immaterial God. I said, so you will take anything at all and turn it into its exact opposite just so that you can complain this thing that you're desperate to believe in.
Okay. So, I mean, what Dave asked me was, why isn't it the universe? Well, because the universe isn't eternal, and it is contingent on certain facts. So that it can't be the non-contingent entity, because it displays contingency of its own.
Why do we need a non-contingent? I'm just not why are we pretending that it has to be contingent on something?
Yeah.
No, so that there is something non-contingent. I mean, the syllogism what the syllogism proves is that there has to be a first term in the ontological series.
So
That's how the series works. So, what do you say?
And what is your first term? There's that something had to have existed. There was something that necessarily existed. The necessary existence in this case, and the one that I suggest, is material itself. You can speed up material to make energy. You can slow down energy to make material, but it's still the same thing. So dead, unconscious material is not the living, immaterial, immortal consciousness. Right? You get that, right?
Right.
Okay.
But
so what does it matter?
Yeah, so what does what matter?
The necessary being is not immaterial, it's material. It's not conscious, it's unconscious. It's not living, it's dead. So therefore it is not God.
Well, no, I'd say the non-contingent entity is eternal and omnipotent.
Why would it have to be omnipotent?
Well, because if something is non-contingent, the relationship it has to everything else is contingent on it. But if everything else is contingent on it, that means that
if we're talking about a universe in which there is no supernatural, no magic, no gods, which is that's the one hypothesis. You want to have a hypothesis where reality isn't real, it's all imaginary, it's all imagined by a mind. And I have the hypothesis where reality is real and there is no immaterial mind to imagine it. In which case, the necessary being is the dead, unconscious material, and you have that it is the immortal, immaterial consciousness. And then we're going to look for support for that, right? So we have a universe in which everything is apparently material. There is no immaterial, there is no magic, there is no God. And you're going to give me a reason to believe the direct opposite. Only you don't have a reason. You just have an argument that is based on nothing but unsupported assertions that I'm supposed to believe because reasons?
The assertion that the universe is contingent on anything is baseless, and the assertion that your deity would be non-contingent is also baseless, I feel.
No, the universe is contingent. It's contingent on the laws, like laws of expansion, laws of thermodynamics. It's contingent on the speed of light.
Not an entity have created it.
In order for something to exist, as we've already said, it must have properties. If it doesn't have properties, it doesn't exist. Coincidentally, and this is kind of important, God doesn't have properties. But we're going to ignore that. What?
Or your God has properties, but then we're asking where those properties...
You can't say that God is conscious and also say that we are all a dream of Brahma. Not in the same argument.
I wasn't saying that we're in a dream of Brahma.
I don't realize that you were saying it, but yeah, you were. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't saying like a dream. I was just saying that physics is like God's thoughts, right? So the laws of physics are God's thoughts. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. We are imaginary. We are supposed to believe that we are a dream of Brahma.
Well, imaginary is defined on
12 years old. I first heard this argument at 12 years old. It was instantly my least favorite theistic argument, and it remains so still today.
I just don't really understand like the hyper intellectualization of apologetics. Just it's very clear that you just you want for a deity to exist, and that's fine. And you're kind of playing with semantics and twisting words around to pretend that there is a logical basis for it. There isn't. And we also cannot disprove your deity. So it's just kind of, I think it's just going to be this way indefinitely. I just don't really see this ever being resolved. As long as you don't, preach some hyper-specific deity from one of the world religions and try to assert any position over public policy or anything like that, I'm absolutely fine with you holding your belief. I don't like apologists trying to intellectualize faith and turn it into a logical argument that doesn't exist. I'll never see it. I'll never see the logic behind this way of thinking.
Okay, well,
and I have to have reason to believe something. So we have pretty profound evidence that there is a material universe, that material exists, that atoms are real. And that if, in fact, atoms were not real, if everything was imaginary, then we have very complex sciences to show how vision works, how our hearing works, how the sense of smell works, all of these. And all of these are determined by the existence of atoms. So that if atoms themselves do not exist and everything's entirely imaginary, then your God, who imagined all of this, also imagined these excuses that he knew would fool us. Thus, the God you imagine is a liar. So I have problems with all of that. So we have reason to believe that there is a material world. Give me a reason to believe that there is a non-material, i.e. magical, alternative reality.
So, was that going to give you a reason why there isn't a magical reality?
Supernatural, immaterial.
Material. Yeah. What is that even?
I just wanted to make sure I understand the question.
Supernatural equals magical. If you use the word supernatural in a sentence, you could replace it with either the words magical or imaginary and not change the accuracy of the sentence.
Okay, but sorry, I'm just not sure what the question is. You want me to give you a reason for something?
Right. I've given you the reason to believe in a material world. Can you give me a reason to believe in the immaterial mind that literally imagined everything into existence, or that it doesn't really exist because we are all, in fact, imagination? Give us a reason to believe your position.
Sure. I mean, there's this idea of digital physics. So it's a model of physics which views physics as being the output of information processing. So, I mean, you can have like hypothetically, the world could exist inside like a mechanical space, or it could exist as information processing in a mind. Well, I mean, in physics, there's this holographic principle, right? And that's basically showing that physical space itself is an emergent 3D representation of information processing. That's kind of what that's saying. But then there's also this area of study called, maybe you've heard of it, quantum cognition and quantum decision theory. And that's shown that information processing inside of mind, it actually exhibits the quantum principles, which are known to underlie the emergence of physical space. So from those 2 points, we can infer that the information processing from which physical space is emergent is basically scientifically indistinguishable from the same information processing that occurs in a mind. So you would basically just say that either our world is
in quantum mechanics. It's just saying thought obeys quantum mechanical principles, therefore it's immaterial. That doesn't follow.
When he says we can infer, he really means let's just imagine.
This is what I was getting at earlier.
I'm saying that
stuff. You know what I mean?
It's to do with models. To do with scientific models, right? So there's this old, if you're familiar with like the way that they used to do psychology, the predominant approach was, it's called classical psychology, or basically using classical statistics. And it came, they came up with these puzzles, like called the question order effect. Right? So there was kind of basically classical statistical modeling couldn't predict the order in which people would answer questions when there's like a sequence of questions, when the sequence of questions was altered. Like people seem to be assessing the outcomes of a question like all at once. Sort of like you think of the alternatives all at once, and then there's like a kind of you give the answer afterwards. So I might have made a mistake there, but what I'm
these are all very interesting things about the process of thought, but they don't point to anything immaterial existing.
Well, what I wanted to point out is that once quantum cognition came along, what they did was they applied the basis of quantum mechanics, which is complementarity or non-commutativity. So it's like this idea that certain processes can happen in parallel. So like entanglement and so on. They applied those principles to these same question order effects, and what they found is that it eliminates the paradox. Right? They end up with like more accurate modeling when they do that, and so the inference, like what Aaron was asking about, the inference is that that what is happening inside a mind is the same kind of information processing that takes place in quantum mechanics. So what I'm saying is that the two are scientifically indistinguishable.
I don't. This is what I was talking about earlier. Is you're just pointing at quantum mechanics and pretending that it infers immateriality. It doesn't.
No, I'm saying that, right. So in this digital physics model, the physical space is emergent from a deeper reality. It's a model of physics that comes from studying the quantum properties of black holes. Right. That's where the holographic principle comes from.
Okay, I'm getting the impression that when you say a deeper reality, you mean not reality at all.
Right. We're asking you to substantiate that aspect.
Well, I mean, the support for that is the way that physicists have built on this theory by a guy called Juan Maldacena. So he wrote this theory in 1997. He's an Argentinian physicist, and it's called the conformal field theory, and it's linked to like this special kind of space called an anti-de Sitter space. The anti-de Sitter space is where the physical states actually appear, like the physical space actually appears in the ADS. That's where you see all this information. Well, the conformal field theory is where the information processing takes place. And so these ideas of holography are now combining in the quantum cognition results and stuff. Those kind of fit into in that previous theory. This is how physicists are building this model of digital physics. So what the connection is just that physics can be hypothesized to emerge from information processing.
Aaron,
I have a question then.
Aaron,
The whole universe
I
can
have
be
a
a
question.
simulation too. It doesn't
Aaron.
substantiate anything material.
Aaron, can you please check Discord?
Can I? Okay. All right. So we've been having fun with this, but I checked Discord. All right, and I was having fun with this. I haven't been checking the other calls and queue, and I probably should have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
so your recent point calls to attention. Why is it then that, because you said this was in 1990 something or other, that somebody in Argentina wrote a thing and gave you an excuse so that you can make believe what you were already determined to make believe, but when you bring up the argument from a physicist said this, why is it that now, or as at least as recently as 2005, only 7.5% of physicists believe in God?
You're asking me why?
It's
yeah.
not 70%. That's 7%.
Well, I mean, I can't read their minds. I mean, this is all to do with interpretation.
Okay, and you can't read their minds. Which, if you could, that would be an argument for theism as well. So I've been told that we need to move on, and so I'm going to. Yeah, I appreciate your time. I was having a bit of fun with this, but that is kind of at the exclusion of everybody else. And we do have other theists in the waiting. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you for bringing that in. All right.
Thank you.
And we will get on to the next caller. Thank you very much.